So today is Sunday, the 24th of May. Do a pre-week analysis, as always, starting with DXY. Moving on to EURUSD, and then we'll touch up on GU to see if there's any differences there, any SMT or any divergence that we can kind of expect or that's already there that we can look to use in our plays for next week. So coming into the close of last week or of this week, we're essentially creating a bullish flag at a POI that we're currently holding, taking more and more liquidity to the upside. We've now filled the gap that was created back in the start of April. So this price kind of this swing here is now efficient. When it comes to price, it's balanced, it's efficient. We can still do have a gap up here, so price could push higher if it wants to continue bullish. But we do have the possibility of price rolling over given its current indicators. What we do see with a bullish flag though is price will typically look to expand out of these ranges, given its pressure is squeezing to the upside rather than squeezing to the downside. So we could see price squeeze, fill this gap to the left, and then roll over potentially. But for the meantime, we are just consolidating, so I'm not going to be looking to jump into anything early next week. I just know that there isn't going to be a high quality position for myself based on that. So we have an accumulation. If we draw a box from our recent swing high to our recent swing low, we have an area of accumulation essentially. So we can trade within this accumulation on the lower time frames, just knowing that the high time frame perspective is a little bit undecided or is undecided currently. If you trade mechanically, then you continue to trade your mechanical way. But when you're trying to develop a bit of a narrative using the higher time frames, this is not something that you want to be trying to guess or speculate on where price might go. You could have continued to see price or held price above this region, and you would have got either stopped at break even or just chopped up for the last 2 days of last week. So be conscious of that. And like I said, you can take trades on a lower time frame. So for example, I took a long in on EURUSD when DXY was in this region. No, understanding that price was at the upper half of the accumulation zone inside a bearish POI. It is a little bit lower class based on the consolidation of the higher time frame, and that's just something you have to be aware of. So coming into next week, just jump to the daily quickly. Well, I'm not a fan of staying on the daily, but we do have areas to the downside which price could come to. You have these opening gaps, inefficiencies, and ultimately, we do have moves to the left that price could mitigate. But we are pushing to the upside on the daily. We've been pretty bullish for the last week or so, and I would expect that to continue doing that until we get evidence of anything else. But we are holding this region pretty strongly, I'd say. So you would call that an area of resistance if you want, but it's just not really budging. So we'll see what price does there. I mean, when we think about what's happened this weekend from a geopolitical kind of perspective, I know we don't want to, or I don't like using it to ultimately tell me whether to get in or out of a trade, but it is good to have an awareness of. So we're seeing Trump or the kind of discussions between Washington and Tehran somewhat positive apparently, and that's obviously going to drop the dollar. So we could open with a new week opening gap to the downside, which would hold this level as an area of resistance essentially, and we could then look for longs off the back of that on currency. So that's something to be aware of. But also just be aware of the fact that we've had these things from Trump already come through. So he said that the discussions were positive, and then doesn't really mean anything. There's not much what's the word, proof to the pudding, I suppose. A lot of it is just kind of mumbo jumbo from Mr. T. So we'll wait. We could expect a new week opening gap to the downside given the stuff that's already been kind of going on this weekend. But like I said, I'm not going to be looking to get into anything urgently given where price is at. If we want to draw like a kind of bullish flag, this is what it would look like. We've got price ultimately accumulating or squeezing to the upside off of a bullish leg. The typical pattern, I mean, I don't typically trade patterns, it would be something like this. Okay, so we could see that. But like I said, we've had DXY, some news which would be bearish for DXY, which would ultimately gap it to the downside come Sunday's open, so this evening. So what does that look like on the pairs that we trade? So I'll just be covering, like I said, EU and GU, and if George, if you want me to cover anything else, just say. But it is the flip side for EURUSD. We're accumulating to the downside of a bearish flag. So we are holding this level. So again, bearish confluence at the moment to continue looking sell side. However, we're holding this gap right here. So this inefficiency is holding quite nicely. I wouldn't be surprised if we just kind of run through that. But like I said, given the fundamentals, we could see price gap up. That doesn't mean that the week will kind of trade bullish for Euro, but that'll mean that we could start bullish, and that could have some influence on the first 2 days. When we think about weekly narrative or profile, something to kind of not guess, but to have an understanding of if something you trade is weekly profile. Monday, Tuesday could be that gap to the upside to create high of week, taking out the previous week high. So we get a Monday, Tuesday push up, a high of week, and then Wednesday is our reversal, and we ultimately then continue bearish to the downside. That is something that I actually like the sound of, and something that I'd probably go off of my higher probability plays. But we don't always get what we wish for. So I wouldn't be surprised if price doesn't do that. I think the highest probability thing that I could kind of expect is price gaps up and then just continues trading lower. But we'll see. Ultimately, we don't want to speculate. We want to react and then apply our edge where we can. So get rid of this because we've closed through this gap already. So we're ultimately, we've closed through this. We haven't actually quite closed through this. We're still holding the downside of it, but majority of that's been kind of balanced now. We're holding this inefficiency to the downside, but we are ultimately bearish. So waiting for confirmation, currently bearish on EURUSD. We want to kind of identify some of our areas of liquidity as well. We've got this really nice trend line liquidity, which is kind of just asking to get taken. And then this would be the previous week high. So really nice draws to the upside, holding a bullish fair value gap on the higher time frame. We'll just be waiting for confirmation then to start going higher. And so we've got the sweep of that low there. We'll just be waiting for a close above these highs to confirm a switch in bias essentially. So I'll touch on GU quickly. It's a little bit messy. Get rid of this. Trying to think of anything. So this was the trade taken. So it wasn't EURUSD. It was I took it on GU last week. But that was the flip side of the DXY position that I was just kind of going over how we were holding that bearish gap. And at the time we had SNT between GU and EU, and GU was the stronger pair. Hence why I went to take GU longs. It was pretty straightforward, in my opinion. GU was the GOAT, bro. It was fucking. It just, like I said, it just spiked up, smashed my TP. Although I was in all of this chop. Like price was doing this for ages, and I was like, I was getting emotional. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, oh, I'm gonna move my stop loss, and I didn't. And thank God, because I would have been break even here. And if I didn't go break even there, I held it, and then I was like, oh, now I'll go break even, and we got taken out again before it eventually just started pumping. So that was nice. But we are getting some accumulating conditions. Like we're not even, well, I suppose we are getting a bit of an AMD play, but it's not really like the cleanest I'd like to see. But we are getting that kind of power of 3 setup occurring. Price is more so stepping up on GU than EU, so we are making like clearer highs and lows, but we are still accumulating to the upside with this kind of like this wedge, and I'm just like not a massive fan of it. So we'll see what price does. I'd rather wait for price to kind of push, really use this as a flip zone, get higher time frame confirmation of bearish pressure to then ultimately trade price back towards the low of the week. That would be like the nice play on GU if we are kind of continuing bearish, because our strong highs are up here, and this is now our strong low. So, or our relevant low, which means the next draws are ultimately to peel over to the downside. So this is pretty nice price action in my opinion. And it's a little bit messy. Like, apologies for that, but this is GU is looking pretty nice on the higher time frame. Switch to the EU. EU not so much. Like EU is currently the ugly sister. GU is just like waiting to do something. So it's in these kind of periods that we don't want to. I mean, you know your setups. If you know what your high quality setups are, you know your low quality, then execute on that. But for me, this is right now undecided. A little bit more confirmation, and then I'd be more than happy to just kind of like set on shorts from that point. So I assume George's going to say, "Can I look at gold?" Do you want me to look at anything else, George? Can't. I'm just going to go fresh chart. Do I need? Yeah, I'm going to go fresh chart. So gold. Gold on the daily is, in short terms, bearish. We're continuing to sell to short to the downside. We have this big rejection in here, so this would be like the ultimate low that we'd be waiting for price to come to. But we've got to be conscious of this whole region that rejected whatever level this is in price. So it's like the 4,000 kind of dollar region. Price has kind of bounced off that pretty hard. And now we're kind of like just accumulating between these lows and these highs up here. So again, looks like the market's waiting to do something. What we're seeing is obviously the market's not reacting to things like CPI at the moment, whereas that was traditionally like the most volatile period of the month. It's waiting for things like Trump news or Tehran news or whatever it is to ultimately dictate what way the market's going and where the volatility is distributed. Which is making it obviously hard to trade traditional systems or the systems that we backtest, because in the last however many years that's not been something that well, most people probably tested. So when it comes to gold though, daily wise, we're moving to the downside. I'm not going to mark out any POIs from a weekly perspective, but looking at the daily, we've inversed this gap. We could come up and take this previous week high out. This would be really nice actually. Is this previous week high? That is not previous week high. Oh, maybe so. This would be previous week high. So we could take this level of price out, and then use this as a flip zone, and that would be probably the nicest play on gold if we do continue to the downside. If we don't do that, we flush through this level, then I'd just be looking to trade gold higher. I don't really second guess gold much when it's looking to go long. Yeah, 100. I don't second guess gold when it's looking to go long, because when it does, it simply just continues going, and you can get caught out waiting for a pullback on the higher time frame on gold that will never come. Like for example, here, there's like when gold just starts to rally, there's no pullback, or at least not for a while. So like broke here, you would have had to wait how many days? 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean that's fine. You'd be waiting for like an intraday pullback, which is like fine, but if you're on a 5-minute chart, you'd be waiting for a high quality position for a very long time. So I'm looking to just get in if it's going long, given that it typically just goes up, much like kind of like what's it called, the S&P, and it's a commodity, so it will technically just go up as long as it's not hyperinflated by what it was recently. And we're seeing that rebalance now. So yeah, this is kind of my look on gold. Take out previous week high and go bearish, or use this as a flip zone and ultimately start taking out, targeting these highs up here. So we got that one, and then this one. Then on the daily, obviously we've got gaps to the upside, which would be quite nice. Weekly looks a bit dirty. I don't want to even look at that. And then hourly is just like accumulating. So my algo, funnily enough, didn't take a trade past Wednesday because it doesn't trade ranging conditions basically. So from here, it just didn't trade anything, which I thought was actually quite nice. Um, so yeah, that's the outlook on gold basically. I'm not going to be looking to get involved unless I see one of those two things with confirmation, obviously on like the hourly 15-minute. But yeah, man. Anything else I want to look on? I mean, Aussie dollar, barely been looking at. Choppy, sell side. Yeah, I mean, Aussie dollar is going to be looking to sell off to this downside down here if we continue bearish. But right now, again, it's like we're just accumulating between this high and this high. So I'll be waiting for a sweep above. If I was going to continue bearish, I want to sweep above this high to then go lower, or continuation out of this low like that. That would be my play on Aussie dollar as well. Price action is just weird at the moment. Word, it is weird. It's weird. It's just requiring a little bit more. I think this is where experience in the markets is definitely playing a part for like people. Like if you're a new trader and you're trading like a mech model, you're probably fine. But if you're a new trader trying to trade discretionary in these conditions, I wouldn't be surprised if you're just getting shot to bits at the moment. Um, quite frankly. Yeah, a lot of sitting on hands, 100%. I mean, last week I took 2 trades, took a loss on Tuesday, which I think was a valid EURUSD reversal. And then on the Friday, we had obviously that nice GU long. And like, that's just the way things are playing out at the moment. I don't mind that, but I think we'd all love to just take winning trades every day, but that's just not it's just not the way the cookie crumbles. Anyway, I'm gonna cut this one here. I think we've covered everything that we need to cover. Do you want anything else covered, Jord, or happy for me to just cut this one? Bless. All right, appreciate it. And mentees, booking a calls if you need. Any kind of like questions people have, just send me a DM. Safe.